You are in the middle of a transformation you cannot see yet. Not because it is not happening, because you are inside it. Because the nature of genuine transformation is that it is invisible from the interior while it is occurring. The caterpillar does not watch itself become the butterfly. It simply dissolves, and then something entirely different exists where it used to be. You are in the dissolving phase, and what you are dissolving into is something considerably more extraordinary than the version of yourself you have been carrying through the ordinary days that have been leading here. No idea. That is what the title says, and that is what I want to begin with, because your current lack of awareness of what is building is not a failure of perception. It is simply the specific blind spot that every human being has to their own becoming when the becoming is still in progress. You will see it when it is finished. And what you will see is going to require a moment of simply standing in it before you can believe it is actually yours. Let me begin with the hottest part, because the title puts it first, and there is a reason it belongs first. Not hottest in the superficial sense of a numerical ranking on some external scale of attractiveness. Hottest in the specific, more interesting sense of most fully yourself, of most in your own power, of most inhabiting the complete, unedited, undiluted version of who you actually are, rather than the adjusted, accommodated, slightly compressed version that most environments have been getting from you. There is a version of you that has been held back, not maliciously, not by any specific person or any specific choice that was wrong, by the accumulation of contexts and relationships and dynamics that were not quite the right size for the full you. That required small adjustments, small compressions, small daily individually insignificant modifications to the complete version of yourself so that the complete version would fit more comfortably into the available space. Those modifications are ending, not because you have made a decision to stop making them, but because the space around you is changing, because new contexts are coming that are sized correctly for the full you, because the people who are about to enter your life or to move into closer proximity within it are not people who require the compressed version. They are people who are drawn to and capable of holding the expanded one. And in the presence of the correctly sized space, the modifications stop being necessary. The full version simply comes forward because it no longer has a reason not to. Let me describe what the full version of you actually looks like, because I think you have gotten glimpses of it in certain moments, in certain contexts, with certain people who created enough safety and enough resonance for it to briefly appear, and then it retreated back when those conditions changed. What is coming is not those glimpses anymore. What is coming is that version as your permanent baseline, not a state you achieve in the right conditions, the conditions you carry with you into every room. The thing that is simply there when you walk in, before any chemistry or connection or particular resonance has been established, because it is no longer dependent on the environment to sustain itself. It is emanating from within. The specific quality of someone who has done enough internal work, released enough of the compression, resolved enough of the old conditioning that required them to be less than their actual size, that the full version has become the only version. That the gap between what you are showing and what you actually are has closed to nothing. That is what hot actually means when it arrives in the form I am reading. Not how you look, how you exist, the specific, unmistakable quality of someone who is fully occupying their own presence, not performing it, not managing it, simply being it at full capacity. That is magnetic in a way that nothing else is. That is magnetic in a way that nothing else is. I want to describe specifically what changes when the full version becomes the permanent baseline. The easiest way to describe it is in terms of what stops. The monitoring stops, the continuous background tracking of how you are being perceived that has been running as a parallel process underneath everything you do in social and professional and personal context. The slight habitual self-consciousness that makes a person fractionally less present in their own experience because a portion of their attention is always allocated to observing themselves from the outside. When the full version becomes the baseline, that monitoring becomes unnecessary, not through a decision to stop it, through the simply organic irrelevance of monitoring something that no longer needs to be managed because it is simply being expressed. The self-editing stops too. The specific, largely unconscious process of catching a thought or a response or an expression before it fully forms and smoothing it into something more acceptable, more appropriate to the context, more considered, less likely to be received poorly. You have been doing this continuously with such automaticity that it stopped feeling like effort for so long that you have partly forgotten what it feels like to simply respond. When the full version is the baseline, the responding is direct, thought to expression, without the processing layer that usually sits between them. And that directness, that specific quality of someone who is simply saying what they think and doing what they feel and responding to what is in front of them without the mediation of self-management is what produces the magnetic quality that other people experience as heat. Now let me speak to the rich part because it is real and it is specific, and I want to give it the same precision I have been giving the other piece. Something is building in the material dimension of your life, not as a single dramatic event that arrives from nowhere and changes everything in an instant. More like the culmination of several separate threads that have been developing at their own pace, in their own way, through whatever channels each of them has been moving through, and that are now approaching a window in which they arrive together, in which the separate results of separate processes produce a combined picture that is significantly different from any individual piece would suggest. The threads converging. For some of you, this is financial in the direct sense, money moving towards you through channels that have been active but slow, a result arriving from something you put in motion at an earlier point, a return on an investment, not necessarily monetary, that has been developing and is now completing. For others, this is opportunity. The specific, well-timed arrival of something that was not available to you in earlier forms because the earlier forms of you were not quite positioned to receive it. But you are positioned now. The work you have done, the development that has occurred, the specific version of yourself that is emerging from the transformation I described at the beginning of this reading has placed you in exactly the position that this particular opportunity requires. For still others, this is a shift in the quality of your material life that is not about a single arriving thing, but about a change in the overall trajectory. A change in the direction the arrow is pointed that produces, over time, a significantly different destination than where the previous direction was headed. In all three cases, the same word applies. Abundance, not as a concept, as an actual material, daily life changing reality. I want to speak to why both of these things, the hottest and the richest, are arriving in the same window. Because the simultaneity is not coincidence, and understanding it changes how you relate to what is coming. They are the same thing expressed in two different dimensions, the internal and the external reflecting each other. The becoming of the fullest version of yourself, producing as a direct consequence rather than an incidental side effect, the material circumstances that match and support and reflect that internal becoming. This is how it actually works. Not the version where you manifest abundance by visualizing it or by feeling wealthy before the wealth arrives. The more fundamental version where the alignment of who you are with what you are doing and how you are moving through the world produces organically and inevitably results that match the alignment. You cannot be the fullest version of yourself and have the material dimension of your life continue to reflect a smaller version. Reality adjusts. It does not adjust instantly. It adjusts in proportion to the authenticity and the completeness of the internal change. And the internal change that has been occurring in you slowly, sometimes painfully, through the specific processes and releases and realignments that this period of your life has contained, has been real and has been complete enough to produce a material reflection that is genuinely different from what came before. Reality adjusts. It does not adjust instantly. It adjusts in proportion to the authenticity and the completeness of the internal change. And the internal change that has been occurring in you slowly, sometimes painfully, through the specific processes and releases and realignments that this period of your life has contained, has been real and has been complete enough to produce a material reflection that is genuinely different from what came before. I want to give this one more specific image because I think it captures the mechanism more clearly than the explanation does. Picture water finding its own level. You have been holding yourself at an artificially lower level, not through conscious choice, through the accumulated weight of environments and relationships and conditions that were not sized for your actual level, and that created pressure in the direction of compression. Remove the pressure and the water finds its level, the level it was always going to find if the pressure were not present. That is what is happening in you right now. The pressure is lifting, and the level you are finding, the natural, unforced, actually yours level of how you exist when the compression is no longer there, is considerably higher than what was visible when the compression was doing its work. The material dimension of your life is going to reflect that level. Let me speak to what you have been going through to get here, because this reading would be dishonest if it delivered the arrival without acknowledging what preceded it. This has not been an easy season, not visibly, not in the dramatic, obvious, everyone can see it way, but in the specific, interior, mostly private way of someone who has been doing the kind of work that does not produce visible results while it is happening. The work of releasing things that no longer served, of letting go of versions of yourself that were built to survive environments that no longer exist, of confronting and moving through the specific internal material that was standing between the current version of you and the next one. That work is unglamorous. It does not look impressive from the outside. It frequently does not even feel like progress from the inside. It often feels like the opposite, like regression, like confusion, like the strange disorientation of having let go of something familiar before the thing that replaces it has fully arrived. You have been in that disorientation and you have kept going anyway. Not because you had clear evidence that the going was producing anything, because you understood somewhere in the honest and stubborn core of yourself that stopping was not actually the other option, that the alternative to continuing through the disorientation was not a comfortable return to something that no longer fit, but rather something considerably worse. You chose to continue, and the continuing produced the emerging version of you that is about to become visible, that is about to become your permanent baseline, that is about to walk into rooms and produce the specific effect of someone who is fully in their own power and fully aligned with what they are doing and fully present in the quality of who they have become. Tell me in the comments if you feel this emerging, if there are moments, specific recent moments, where you caught a glimpse of the version of yourself that is coming into permanence, where something was different than it used to be in a way you could feel but perhaps not yet fully articulate, where you did something or said something or responded to something and recognized in the doing or saying or responding that you were operating from a different place than you were operating from a year ago. Tell me. I want to know what the emerging has felt like from the inside. I want to speak to what the people around you are about to experience, because transformation of this nature is not only felt by the person it is happening to, it radiates. The people who have known you across the period that is ending are going to notice something, not immediately, not in a single conversation or a single encounter that makes the change dramatic and obvious. In the accumulation of interactions over the coming weeks and months in which something is consistently different about how you carry yourself, how you enter conversations, how you hold space for your own perspective without the subtle habitual backing down that used to characterize the moments when your view was challenged, how you make decisions, how you move. The quality of your presence is going to be new even to people who have known you for years. And the response to that new quality is going to be, in most cases, the specific human response to being in the presence of someone who has come into themselves fully. Attention, the involuntary, organized around you quality of attention that people give to something genuinely magnetic, that cannot be demanded or manipulated or produced through any strategic behavior. That simply arrives in response to the actual, real, fully present thing. You are going to be that thing in ways you have not been before. Not because you changed, because you finally fully arrived in what you always were. I want to address something practical before we close, because readings about becoming the hottest and richest you have ever been can exist at the level of inspiring possibility without landing in anything useful, and I want this to land in something useful. The practical thing I want to say is this: the version of you that is emerging needs room, not the room that you ask for from other people, the room that you create by the specific practical decisions you make about how to allocate your own time and energy and attention in the coming period, by what you say yes to and what you say no to, by which relationships you invest in and which you allow to naturally receive less of your energy, by what projects or pursuits or creative directions you show up for with your full capacity rather than the portion that is left over after everything else has taken its share. The emerging version requires your actual capacity, not the remainder of it, This means some things will need to receive less than they have been receiving. Not because you are becoming selfish or closing down or prioritizing yourself in a way that harms the people around you. Because the version of you that is arriving has specific requirements for what it needs to be fully expressed. And meeting those requirements is not selfishness, it is stewardship. You are becoming something worth stewarding properly. Make the space. You are becoming something worth stewarding properly. Make the space. And let me be specific about what making space actually requires, because I think it is worth naming concretely rather than leaving it at the level of principle. It requires saying no to things that have been receiving a yes by default, not things that are bad or wrong, things that simply are not the right size for who you are becoming, that were sized for the earlier, more compressed version, and that the emerging version no longer fits into without shrinking again, that have become habit rather than genuine choice. It requires protecting time that has been available for interruption, the specific hours and the specific attention that the emerging version needs for its own development, its own expression, its own continued becoming, not selfishly, but with the clear understanding that what cannot be protected cannot be sustained. And it requires something, perhaps the hardest of the three. It requires letting some people's perception of who you are update without managing the update for them. Allowing yourself to simply be the new version in their presence without explaining the change or softening it for their comfort or reverting to the familiar older version, because the older version creates less friction. Let them adjust to you, not the other way around. As we close, I want to give you the full image. You, in some future moment that is not far off, not performing anything, not working at anything, simply present in the full, uncompressed, unmodified, completely authentic version of yourself that has been coming into existence through the process that this reading has been describing. And around you, the material reality of a life that matches, resources that reflect your actual value, relationships that meet you at your actual level, opportunities that require exactly the version of yourself that you have become and that are sized correctly for what you can now offer, not the adjusted version, the real one, standing in a life that finally fit. That is what is coming, Virgo. You have no idea, but you are about to find out